Up to the quarter of the food you buy goes in the garbage, right? And that means every one of us is responsible for spending about 218 or sending about 218 pounds of food to landfills every year. Now, all that food just rots and produces methane, a potent greenhouse gas. By the way, that food that food waste isn't coming just from homes. Grocery stores and restaurants, they're also part of this big problem.
Now, it's not just a problem here in the U.S. Our friends across the pond are also wasting a lot of food, but a London-based restaurant is working to solve that. They've managed to go zero waste in ways you wouldn't have imagined. Douglas McMaster is the owner and chef at Silo London, joining us now. Douglas, thanks so much for coming on to talk about Silo being the first zero-waste restaurant. What was your goal when you first started this restaurant?
Hello from London, everyone at the Weather Channel. So it began with an artist who was building a stunning structure in Melbourne and Sydney out of waste materials. And he's a bit of a genius and can see the future. And said to me, as a chef who had worked in some of the world's best restaurants, he said to me, "Could you not have a bin?" And I thought this was just such an abstract thing to say. Why would somebody even think that, let alone suggest that? And it turns out to be quite a plausible question. And that was 11 years ago, and it's became the rest of my life. But I guess that's why and how I got onto this path.
That's amazing. So you're like, okay, I got to get rid of this and figure out where to put anything left over that might, patrons don't eat. So, this food waste that we're talking about, how much have you been able to divert from landfills since you started adopting this idea?
So I'm glad you mentioned landfill, because that's where we define the bin. So a general waste bin, food that goes to landfill, is the bad bin. I often say we don't have a bin, and that's sort of true. It's true in that nothing goes to landfill. There are bins that get a bad name. Recycling bins are not an evil bin. Compost bins are certainly not an evil bin. So there is a distinction between the different bins, and we actually call the good bins silos.
I like that, right? Because there's food in them. Yeah.
It's a positive.
Right. There you go. You factored this into your packaging as well. So how have you cut down on packaging?
That's a good question. Well, basically, the same applies for every material across the board. So you could literally make a long list of everything that you're going to purchase or acquire, everything that you need within a system. That could be in your home, could be in a restaurant, a canteen, a bakery, a cafeteria. Now, you just, one by one, you say, right, can we get this in from the origin, from the source? Can we get all of our vegetables in reusable crates? Can we get the milk and the cream? You were just talking about milk, from really good, amazing dairies directly from the dairy, and how can we get everything with no unnecessary packaging? And so we're finding these reusable vessels that can endlessly be reused, or materials, the packaging themselves is completely compostable. 10 years ago when we started, that wasn't really available. So everything came in stainless steel pails. It was a food system harking back to 200 years ago, a pre-industrial food system, we call it. But now there are more biodegradable materials on the market. So say if we're getting some courier helpers send some wild food, they can wrap it in biodegradable materials, which can then be composted. And so within the restaurant, every material, if it is waste, if it's not digestible or reusable, it is compostable. And that is not waste. That is food for the soil, for the next series of food.
Now, this might be a silly question, but I'm going to ask you, is it all worth it? Because it seems like it is a lot of effort, and I'm really wanting to get you to answer something so that maybe other restaurant owners might adopt this idea, because it sounds like it takes a little bit more effort up front.
Absolutely. Good question. Innovation is hard. The greater the innovation, the greater the struggle. But that doesn't mean that certain innovations don't lead to an amazing place with very prosperous results. We've been doing what we've been doing for 10 years. I started with nothing. I was a 26-year-old school dropout who'd worked his way up in the ladders of the best restaurants in the world just by the grit of my teeth, and opened a restaurant with no investment. I remortgaged mortgaged my mother's house to raise a very, very small amount of money to open a bare bones restaurant, and did so and slowly built up from nothing. And I can't say that it's been incredibly lucrative, but it has worked and it is profitable. So restaurants, I don't know if it's the same over in the US, but over here, restaurants are not the best. It's not the best industry for making a ton of cash, to say the very least. But to be zero or positive is a huge success. And to do that with such a radical innovation is some serious progress. Now, I go back to the innovation because when you're trying to change the world, you need to figure a lot of things out. And, when we started, it was like 9 out of 10 things we would innovate within the system would fail. Now, that's not good business. And over the years, over the decade, that's more like 1 in 10 things would fail because we know what we're doing and we know how to navigate the system. However, it's always been an innovation and it's always been a struggle to create this revolutionary food system.
But you're doing it.
And your story's amazing.
It is amazing. And hopefully you've inspired others. And hopefully this will just become status quo at some point. Chef Douglas McMaster from Silo in London, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It is very inspiring to hear someone who's had nothing who could kind of, you would say, is very successful.
Very successful.
Very successful.
Yeah.